Hello, I'm Dave Batchelor. Welcome to Armando Iannucci, The Radio Scotland Years. Before he became the most significant figure in British television comedy, Armando Iannucci spent a bit of a year working at Radio Scotland. He presented youth programmes and spent the rest of the time creating comedy sketches and honing the skills that would eventually put him at the centre of British comedy, radio and television. Now, these sketches haven't been heard by him or anyone else for 18 years. You haven't, have you, Armando?
No, you sent me a CD of all of them and asked me to pick my favourites. And to be honest, I couldn't bear the thought of sitting listening to them.
So you're not the kind of person then who's got a fatherly pride in his youthful efforts?
Well, it's partly my comedic producer hat on, thinking it might be funnier and indeed more interesting radio to hear my reaction as I hear these the first time. I have to quibble with the title, The Radio Scotland Years, because it was just a year. Really, wasn't it?
Not even a whole year.
Not even a whole year.
But
no.
The Radio Scotland Years has more of a comedic ring.
Yes, it sounds better. It's like Krakatoa east of Java, whereas in fact Krakatoa is actually west of Java.
And you join us now in the High Street Paisley for this historic occasion, marking the first ever collection of the poll tax. The crowds and local dignitaries make their way to 45 Sunderland Avenue, where Scotland's first poll tax payment is to be collected. And as the procession swings round now into the avenue itself, the streets are filled with men and women, all hoping to be out when the collectors come round to their houses later. And now the cortege reaches number 45. The Lord Provost moves forward and the ceremony proper is about to begin. The Provost gives the traditional 3 knocks on the front door, and on the back door, and on the garden shed, where the MacDonald family now appear. Mrs. MacDonald sporting a large taffeta "Say No to the Poll Tax" t-shirt, and Mr. MacDonald immaculately dressed in a chamois leather and bucket, pretending to be just a passing window cleaner. And some good-natured banter there between Mr. MacDonald and the Paisley Chief of Police, who places the ceremonial handcuffs onto his wrists. And now the moment itself. Mrs. MacDonald hands over the money, and onto the podium now steps His Royal Highness the Princess Malcolm of Rifkind to make the acceptance speech.
On behalf of the Scottish Office, I declare this poll tax collected. God bless Margaret and all who give to her.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know if... have you ever listened to radio with your head in your hands?
The body language is entertaining.
It's an interesting social document, though, don't you think?
I think it's brilliant. I was very impressed.
Oh, were you?
Well, it brought back that era so splendidly.
Yes, such a long, long time ago.
If you could have got away with sticking your fingers in your ears, you would have done.
I would have done, yes. No, I mean, I'm genuinely interested in what joke comes next.
When you were growing up, what was funny?
What was funny? Well, I was a great big Billy Connolly fan at the time, because when I grew up, Billy Connolly was a sort of a local hero as opposed to a national and international superstar. In fact, my primary school, St. Peter's, Billy Connolly went to that school, and I was there when he made a sort of hero's welcome, except I remember at the time the teachers weren't too sure what to make of him, because he did that notorious sketch about the crucifixion, which we all recited in the playground. But it being a sort of a Catholic school, I remember the teachers feeling a little bit awkward about the fact that, yes, they found it funny, but they must never admit to the pupils that they found it funny.
Were you funny at school?
Yes, I was. Probably, I was the one who did the impressions of all the teachers. I mean, I used to nick lots of jokes off the radio, actually, off radio comedies. And every Christmas, the school put on a sort of a little charity kind of benefit thing for the local pensioners' home round the corner. And I was always the compere, but I tended to do routines just nicked straight off of Mike Yarwood shows and stuff like that.
Stop the music, let's all fake enjoyment in a commercial break. Have you just built 3 sides of a house and don't know what to do with the 4th side? Then why don't you try the new Ronco Wall? Yes, Wall, the perfect finishing touch to your design plans. Simply remove it from its attractive protective covering and manoeuvre it onto position using a pulley system and 40-foot-high winching crane. And hey presto, your home looks finished. Wall from Ronco, the home of basic ideas. There's a sale on at Hyper's Hypermarket in Stirling. Beds, half price. Office furniture, half price. Doors and light bulbs, all half price, apart from light bulbs. Buy 2 colour televisions, get 1 paperclip free. It's crazy. Continental quilts, $12.99, 2 for $33.99. Desks, half price, $7.99 and $8.42. Unbelievable bargains, $2.99. $3.50 linen carburetors, $7.84 Theatre Company, $8.27 from Falkirk calling at Haymarket. All at 50% off reductions in half price at Hyper's Hypermarket in Stirling, where everyone has to shout. Phew, that's better. Time to relax. The ads are over. Now back to the tracks.
Do you remember, very, very on in those days, I discovered that you got paid by the minute. If your sketch was 1 minute and 1 second, that counted as 2 minutes, which might explain for the rather sort of verbose script in some of these.
The structure has a real old-fashioned feel about it, not just the sense of let's make it longer, but the, the chimes, you know, the Listen with Mother chimes. And this is a youth programme.
I know.
You weren't interested in appealing to a youth market.
I'll admit now, I really didn't care. But what was great, actually, to be serious, it was that I remember it just being a great hoot, having this enormous building in Queen Margaret Drive to play around in, and you know, a massive gramophone library and sound effects library, and all the sound engineers who, you know, if I wanted to do a sketch that sounded like a football report, I'd go to the sound engineers who did the football, and they'd cut it together and give me the lip mics that commentators use and stuff like that. So it was fantastic sort of training.
You were abandoned in a building to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound a bit like that.
Hello and welcome to the South Bank Show. My name's Melvin Bragg, and I've got a sinus problem. Over the next 60 guitar-filled minutes, I'll be reviewing lots of things on in London and making 90% of the population of Britain feel really left out. Later on in the programme, I'll be talking to the man who plays the Pretension on Sting's new album. But first, the arts. Here with his weekly report is our art correspondent, Valdemar Panufnik. Thanks, Melvin. Smam, and general pseudo-intellectual oiliness everywhere to you all. This week I've been to see a superlative exhibition of modernist paintings, which have been hailed by the art world as works of genius. They are by the young Glasgow artist and former Scotland striker Kenny Dalglish. Earlier this week I went along to talk to the Liverpool player-manager as his exhibition opened at the Skittosh Notional Grally for Dyslexics in Edinburgh. Kenny, would you say there was a certain frisson to your work, a kind of smam, clever, exuberant play of colour against form? No? I see. And what about your stylistic development? I noticed your earlier Celtic paintings explored the green and white end of the palette, whereas recently you seem to have moved on to what can only be called your red period. This is rather striking, don't you think? That's right. I was always known as a striker. Tell me about this painting, Kenny, this portrait of Bob Paisley. Well, this is my favourite one. It explores the myth of Osiris, the Egyptian sun god, you know, but applies it to a more modern frame of cultural reference. And the title? Gone Yourself, Big Man. I see. And why is it so called? Oh, I wouldn't say it was colder than any other painting I've done.
No shame in old Glasgow gags.
No, there you go. Why was it so cold? Yeah. And, of course, you know, how times have changed, you know, having been on the South Bank show myself.
My dear.
I would never dare do a Melvyn Bragg impression now.
It's not something you do, is it? Actually, on impressions at all.
Impressions,
really,
no. I can't believe how... But also, I can't believe how I must be the only person in Christendom who's able to make a Ponce, Stephen Fry-esque art critic sound exactly the same as Kenny Dalglish. You see why I no longer do impressions.
I think you're being slightly unfair. You came here direct from Oxford. Tell me about going to Oxford. Did you go there with the intention of being funny as well?
Because I was interested in comedy and so on, and I was aware that there was a tradition of satire like Beyond the Fringe and Not the 9 O'Clock News and Monty Python and so on who'd come out of Oxford and Cambridge. I suppose in my very sort of naive, simplistic way, I thought, if I went there, I would be satire. And it wasn't quite as straightforward as that, because actually I went there in the sort of the early 80s, where in fact to say that you came from Oxford and Cambridge was the kiss of death to anyone in comedy. You were meant to come from Manchester or the London stand-up circuit, not Oxford or Cambridge. In fact, there were lots of comedians there who became very well known, very famous, who played down their Oxbridge background, like Nick Hancock and David Baddiel and so on. It was while I was at Oxford, I took part in a strange debate. The title of the debate was "This House Believes That Scotsmen Are Funnier Than Englishmen," and I was on the Scottish team along with Arnold Brown, Jim Naughty, and Andy Cameron, who presented a Sunday morning show on Radio Scotland. And the English side, I can't remember who the English side were. They were rubbish anyway, and we won.
Of course,
I just did my act as part of this debate. But then Andy Cameron got in touch and said that. No, he passed my name on.
He passed your name on to me.
To you, in fact, yes.
And he said to me, "You've got to hire this guy. He's absolutely great." And he described... you may have to do audio description while you do this.
Yes.
The one he described was the impersonation of football teams by request.
That's right.
Specialising in the Scottish Second Division.
That's right. And I'd get the audience to shout out requests, so someone would say, Cowdenbeath or something like that. And then I'd do my impression of Cowdenbeath, which I can't really do on the radio. It's a visual gag, but it's basically, I sort of jumped about the stage in 11 positions, all of 11 people standing in one of those sort of team photos. So I did the back row, and then I leapt forward and did the whole of the front row, 2 of them holding either side of a trophy. It loses something in the telling. So Andy Cameron saw that and said, this guy would be great for radio.
What about Academe? You just abandoned it.
Yeah, well, I think he got me the tail end of... I was actually... I stayed on at Oxford to do a PhD in Paradise Lost. Religious language in John Milton's Paradise Lost. The only thing I can remember from those 3 years of trying to do this PhD, which I never finished, was that the opening lines of Paradise Lost, of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree, has the exact same rhythm scheme to the theme tune to the Flintstones, which of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree. That's all I remember. So I thought it was probably time to get out, really. And I had marked down in the back of my head, go to London, see if I can get some gigs as a stand-up, and see what happens next. And behold, Andy Cameron came along and waved his magic Cameron hand, and I ended up on Radio Scotland.
Presenting this, actually.
There are lots and lots of words like puddle, vortex and attune. But the 6 words I like best of all are Know the Archie Macpherson Show and spoon.
So, yes, I was asked to present Know the Archie Macpherson Show and spoon. No, not and spoon.
Radio had taken on trainees, young, keen, enthusiastic journalists. And simultaneously, Radio Scotland had found it had a hole in its Wednesday night schedule where the football wasn't in the summer.
Right. Yeah.
And as you say, you ended up presenting it.
So I was a sort of a square peg, is that what you're saying? To fill this football-shaped hole.
You were a youth-shaped peg.
Yes.
Can I do my... Yeah. This is your life moment.
Okay.
Armando, do you remember this voice?
That was Queen Latifah and the Mahatella Queens. Queen Latifah, of course, when she's not a rap singer, is also Queen of the Netherlands.
That was Siobhan Sinnott.
Siobhan Sinnott.
She's going to walk in now, is
She's
she?
not going to walk in, but there is an explanation of that slightly gnomic line.
When Armando and I were working together on Bite the Wax, our youth music show, we just about qualified on the youth bit. But the music was a bit more problematic. I wasn't terribly interested in Uta Lemper, and Armando was a bit more of a Mozart man. So we used to, between records, have these huge sheafs of notes so we could sound that was Evan Dando and the Lemonheads now playing at Chelsea, da-da-da. But I do remember there was one time when we were playing a record and it was Armando's turn to back tag it, and it was Queen Latifah and the Mahotella Queens. And we just couldn't find the brief on that one, so he made it up.
He made it up.
Well, yes, I know. I started subscribing to the NME during that period. I could tell you an awful lot about the music of 1986 or 87 or whatever it was.
88.
It's 88.
Yeah.
You know, my musical knowledge goes up to about 1940 and sort of mid-Shostakovich period, and then it's a sort of barren wasteland of knowledge until 1988, when I can tell you all about Lemonheads. Of course, Evan Dandel's still around in London, made London his base. He's having a bit of a comeback. Did you know that?
I take the word for that.
You see?
I'm impressed.
It was kind of star-studded. There was like Eddie Mayer and Claire English and Quentin Cooper and all these people were around. And I remember in the Bite the Wax studio, someone came in who was going to be interviewed by Eddie Mayer, and it was this little girl. And I said, hello, what are you in for? And she said, I'm in here. I've got a band, and you're going to play some of my music, and I'm going to have a little chat. And she was about 16, and it was Texas, and it was Charlene Spiteri. So anyway,
The most famous one you met.
the most famous.
Yeah, right.
She was just a little 16-year-old.
But Bite the Wax was sort of son of Know the Archer.
That's
McPherson
right.
show.
Yes, sorry, I've leapt.
That's sorry.
Yes.
We've heard the sketches and stuff, but we haven't actually heard you present yet.
Hello and welcome to Bite the Wax. I'm Siobhan Sinnott, but my friends call me. Do yours, Armando?
Oh, my friend's never Armando.
Oh, right.
Anyway, hello, Wax fans everywhere. A bit of a boppy programme tonight. It's the last Bite the Wax of the school term, so Miss has let us bring in games. Thanks, Siobhan.
Only if you sit up straight, Armando.
Okay, and to go with lots and lots of our favourite party music. So no new records have come in for us this week, but we've got lots of old goodies for you to pack away your maths jotters to. Later on, Nightlife, your guide to what's on around Scotland. We'll also have a personal look at BBC Radio's festive offerings over the next 10 days or so, and also some album hints for those still to buy their last-minute Christmas presents. Personally, I got my last-minute Christmas presents weeks ago. Anyway, King of Soul, James Brown, seems to have his Christmas gift problem sorted out. Here he is telling us Papa's got a brand new bag.
Can you tell that I sounded like someone who actually speaks another language? And I'm just reading from a textbook on English. None of those words I understood. I'll tell you something strange that happened about 3 or 4 years after that. When I went down and became a radio producer, and I did things like produce comedy for Radio 1. I did Mary Whitehouse Experience, and I ended up doing my own sort of late night show on Radio 1. But it was a comedy show, and I was asked out for lunch. And I met up with the assistant controller of Radio 1. I thought, what's all this about? And he said, you know, we're looking for someone new to take over the Radio 1 breakfast show. And, you know, your name's come up. And I just wondered what you thought about that. And inside, I was wetting myself. I thought, you have no idea what trouble you could be in if this ever happened. And look at the coverage that Chris Moyles get. I mean, imagine that applied to me. Sooner or later, probably within the first day, they would discover that, you know, I wear cardigans and listen to Schubert. I mean, the BBC would have just gone into meltdown. So anyway, I said no.
I mean, you sound there like the kind of presenter you would take off.
I know. It's a sort of public school smashy and nicey.
That was the only model there was, though.
Exactly, yeah.
These sketches that you're in the bowels of Broadcasting House in Glasgow playing with and making up in those, where are you getting the ideas for them? What's the influences? I mean, I'm assuming there's something like Radio McActive there.
Well, there's Radioactive. There's a bit of sort of Stephen Fry did a show called Saturday Night Fry on Radio 4, which clearly crept into one of those items earlier. And then actually just office conversations, just conversations during the day that you have with people in the canteen and stuff, just leads to an idea which you quickly write down and think, oh yeah, that can turn into something. And quite a lot of my comedy anyway is sort of collaborative in that sort of respect anyway.
I said you didn't pay any attention to your youth audience, but actually this one sounds as if it's been aimed at a youth.
Joined in the studio now by maverick record producer Jake Adja, who claims anyone can create their own #1 hit record by following his simple step-by-step guide. All you need is a record collection and a tape machine. Here's Jake.
Actually, it's Jack. Anyway, here's the method. Start off with a record that's got a good solid ground beat. Here I'm sampling the basic rhythm track on the bass line of this one from the Four Tops. You probably can't hear the drumming, but the monitor's getting it up on 5. Okay, that's our bedrock. Let's start building. To the untrained ear, this sounds like a collection of farm animals, but to me it's gold dust. There's an interesting 2/8 backbeat to this. I can pick it up and flip it onto a 4-track through the console to give us a nice disco feel. Now we just add this for melody. And bring up our original bass beat. Now let's feed it all through our mini mixer. And hey presto, here's our #1.
But you've got the lingo, haven't you? You've spent those months hanging out with the audio guys.
Well, I don't do impressions anymore, but I do quietly take note of how people speak and how they behave and what things sound like.
I mean, historians of comedy are actually going to be listening to this stuff, looking for the precursors of your later greater hits.
I tell you what, this is gold dust. This I'm saying now is gold dust, and will itself be worth a lot on eBay.
Hello, yes, fast and exciting now as you join us. Yes, I'm just getting here at the result of tonight's crucial by-election. It's crucial, fast and exciting. Just any moment now with the result, which should be exciting. And I'm joined now as it comes through. Brian.
Yes, Peter, well, over here I'm in the counting, which means the result pretty well underway now. And I can just see which means coming up any second.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the results of the by-election for the constituency of Crucial South. The votes cast were as follows. The Conservative Party, 0. Labour Party, 0. SNP, 0. The SDPLD-PLDP, spoilt vote. I hereby declare a large spoon and a bucket of sardines the elected member for said constituency, as an independent Liberal. Well, quite a major upset there, yes, and exciting. Turning to the Conservative first, no votes for you, you must be feeling.
No, not really. If you look at the figures, you'll see we still managed to come in first place, albeit jointly with everyone else, which I'm sure you'll agree is a remarkable achievement for a government which does, after all, have Norman Fowler in it.
Words indeed there. But Jim Sillars for the SNP, no votes for you? Yes, and that's a pretty solid base on which to start my campaign to say independence in Europe as many times as I can on television. And Labour, poor showing?
No, not really. We're now level pegging with the government, which is the same as winning, isn't it?
Dr. Owen, Mr. Ashdown, the centre vote now split down the middle?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Well, there you have it, the view down here and over to back up there. So it only remains for me. Good watching and thank you.
That's a splendid joke at the end. I hope you recycled that.
I was going to say, the Owen Ashdown joke was quite good. I'd happily use that one again. Yeah.
Surely we can hear on the hour in India.
There was an element of that, yeah. And I mean, not long after doing my stint at Radio Scotland, I found myself in a radio training course in London, along with lots of sort of news journalists, and we were being taught how to do like a news programme. I thought, well, I don't want to do a news programme, I want to do a comedy show, but let's use all these people from the news background and make a false news programme. And so the little pilot I did on the training course became the starter for On the Hour. I sort of sent that up to Radio 4 and they said, oh, this is good, do you want to do a proper pilot?
Tell me what, if you hear anything later on in this one here.
All right, here we go.
Well, this is my very last Bite the Wax. Next week I take up residence in the Piggott wing of the Inland Revenue Remand Centre for Young Evaders. To mark the occasion, we thought it would be a good idea to look back at some of the highlights of the last 6 months, because that way we avoid having to churn out new material.
Now, I've had a lot of fun while I've been working here, but there were moments when things went a little bit wrong. Here's one you've all asked to see again. It was when we had on Freddie de Flam, amazing fire eater. Freddie taught me to swallow fire, or at least he thought he had. Do you remember what actually happened?
Oh, God! Oh, there's a war, you dump! Oh!
Do you know, my mouth hasn't completely recovered from that. To this day, I still can't swallow anything larger than a piano. On to the next clip now, and they say that you should never work with children and animals. Well, as this next clip shows, that was a completely irrelevant bit of advice because it was actually an interview with a South American Indian. Chief Abunza came into the studio to talk about the plight of the Amazon rainforest. And you may remember there was one moment when I asked him about his family, and my words got inadvertently translated as, "Your seventh wife is less gracious than a sack of llama droppings." Here's what happened next. Chief Abunza there, inserting the pipe of peace.
Now, I hear in that the kind of embarrassment of Alan Partridge.
Possibly. I mean, I'm happy to agree. If that allows us just to move on. Yeah.
After half an hour, you seem a little more comfortable.
I'm sort of warming to him. I'd happily invite him to contribute to my next project, but I wouldn't guarantee him any minutage. I mean, he'd have to get on by merit alone.
Well, if you give him 18 years, he might get the hang of it.
Yeah, he might.
Thank you for being prepared to relive the Radio Scotland years. And we're going to end with another Radio Scotland parody, and this one's really too close to be entirely comfortable for us to listen to.
Oh, right.
Before we hear it, let me say I'm Dave Batchelor, and this has been Armando Iannucci, the Radio Scotland years. Armando, thank you very much.
It was a sort of pleasure.
Well, with only a few days to go now before 1989 bursts upon us, here's a quick preview of our Hogmanay entertainment here on Radio Scotland. At 5 p.m. tomorrow evening, it's Radio Review, a look back at the highlights of the last 12 months' broadcasting. That's followed at 6 by News Review 88, a survey of national and international events over the year just ended. On Saturday morning at 10 a.m., there's 88, a look back, a chance to see again some of your favourite moments from the previous evening's compilation programmes. Then at 11, it's time for Garden Accessories in Retrospect, a look back at the highlights of the ever-popular The Garden Accessories programme. On Sunday at noon, there's the Year of the Three Rubber Ducks. Well, a clip there from 88, the Year of the Continuity Announcer. A look back at some of the best programme links here on Radio Scotland, the station whose budget ran out in October. Now it's 9 o'clock, time for Bite the Wax. And you can hear more introductions to Bite the Wax in the year's best introductions to Bite the Wax coming up now.